You're listening to a new episode of The Brave Technologist, and this one features Arjun Khemani, who is an author, podcaster, and memetic warlord helping spread rationally optimistic memes to create a better world. He's currently working on the Zcash mission, a privacy-focused cryptocurrency which features an encrypted ledger using zero-knowledge proofs. In this episode, we discussed how memes can be used as a powerful tool for change, the increasing need for independent and critical thinking in the digital world, why we can't have freedom without privacy, and how Zcash is helping us get closer to that ideal, and how shielded transactions can increase your anonymity, and what's at stake if we don't start to transact more privately. Now for this week's episode of The Brave Technologist. Arjun, welcome to The Brave Technologist. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Luke. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. You're the first memetic warlord we've ever had on the podcast. I'm super interested to get your take. And kind of with that in mind, what does that mean, like being a memetic warlord for less savvy listeners, and what does that mean in your world? And kind of how do you see them as a powerful tool for change?
Sure. Yeah, it's a half joking title, right? I hate the word marketing. It's too corporate for me. Like, I'm not going to use that. But if you think about it, right, all warfare is memetic. So monarchs would fight other monarchs for the vision of reality that they want, right? And that essentially, like, there's this primacy of ideas in the world, and there's just different tools and different ways to fight wars, but everybody is fighting for some sort of ideal world that they want. And there's like conflict between ideas, so that's where problems stem from. And you're just fighting like wars, but fundamentally it's the ideas that you're disagreeing about. And a lot of these wars can be fought like memetically, just like with talking to people, having conversations like this one, right? Having debates. That's why you need like an open society where debate and criticism are encouraged and you're not taking anybody's word for it. And so memetic warfare is just like, I'm super interested in spreading rationally optimistic memes. And memes are far more broader than just internet pictures, funny internet pictures, because that's a niche conception from Richard Dawkins' original conception, a term that he coined called a meme. And then people on the internet just made it like funny pictures on the internet. But memes are basically any ideas that are replicated in people's minds. And so there's different kinds of ideas. Like, this is all heavily inspired by David Deutsch's work in The Beginning of Infinity. He talks about rational and anti-rational memes. Rational memes are those memes that thrive because they survive criticism. So you're not shunning ideas, but you're like coming up with new ideas and conjuring up new ideas and criticizing those ideas, and the best one wins. So those are like rational memes. But there's like dogmatic societies, and religion is a good example, but there's various other dogmatic memes that thrive based on shunning people's criticism. So they will say that you can't question this. This is like the final truth. And so those are the memes that Deutsch calls anti-rational. And so I'm interested in spreading like the rationally optimistic memes in how to make a better world, essentially. And so there's various tools to do that. As you know, like one of the tools I'm really interested in Zcash, called the Machinery of Freedom. So yeah, it's
awesome. And just kind of curious too, like, how did you get here on your journey to this space, right? Because I mean, it's obviously there's undertone and there are pieces of this that have been around for a while, but like, this seems to be something where it kind of finds people, right? Versus like people kind of seeking out, this type of a path. So I'm just kind of super curious, like, how did you find your way towards, doing what you're doing now?
For sure. So during COVID, I was in, I don't remember, middle school or high school, and transitioning in between. And then I was just like super dissatisfied with things, right? Like I had to like figure out what to do in my life. And like there's all this pressure to figure out what I'm going to do after school. And then I just started reading lots of books that swayed me from like the conventional way of thinking and the way of thinking of my peers and whatnot. And I think like one advantage was like I wasn't going to school, so I had this distance between like being indoctrinated every single day and like I could just mute the site, right? I would literally, what I would do is like I would mute my Google Meet or Zoom call daily school, right? Because it was COVID. And I would just like write from my blog, and I would write like one blog post a day. And like I was reading all these books, and then I stumbled upon David Deutsch's work because Naval actually recommended it. So I just like picked up that book, and then that completely changed my worldview in a lot of ways. And after Deutsch, I got into Austrian economics, and like after that, it was just like the natural next step to Bitcoin, right? That's
Right.
the perfect, yeah, so the perfect money. I don't know why a lot of Austrians are not interested in cryptocurrencies. Like maybe they're just too old to look into the tech or whatnot, but it just made sense. But then I realized like, hey, Bitcoin's not really private, and there's this huge flaw of like every single transaction being linked and people's privacy just not existing on chain, right? And especially with like all these mandated KYC now, and even though a lot of people in El Salvador, Argentina are using Bitcoin, they're all still storing their funds in like custodial wallets, doing KYC. So it's all tracked by the government, and that can change, right? So like power right now might be in good hands. Some people might say like, now it's a good time to build in America with the current administration, especially in crypto, but that can change. So you need the right
Oh,
tech
yeah.
at the base layer.
And each change, you're totally on the money with that, right? Like it's a good kind of problem set to have to get to the point where, okay, we can say something like there's a better environment for building, but that brings a whole set of other challenges. And that's what I think is really interesting about what you're saying with privacy, right? Because, I think what often gets missed in this space is any kind of looking at the fine print. The best case, sometimes you get smart code, review or smart contract reviews and things like that. But if you look at the actual policies, like the banking guidance around the Bitcoin adoption and, for legal tender and all of that, like it is very bad on privacy. And so I think what you're doing with Zcash and you in the community, right? Like, I mean, it is totally a community thing. But I think it's really awesome because at Brave, we've been supportive of Zcash for a very long time. They had really great team on the cryptography side and the privacy research on their end. But seeing what you guys have been able to do with memeing this out, right? And it gives me a lot of excitement because you've got a younger crowd now that understands the channels and the tools that and can actually like really start to drive the needle in the right direction. And I didn't have it on my bingo card to see privacy trending in the timeline. I didn't think I would have to be saying, hey, now that degens are into privacy, here's some other things we can talk about, like around privacy, right? Like it's such a good problem to have. I don't know. I just totally like commend you all for doing what you're doing. It's awesome to see it. I mean, how has it been? I'm really curious because you've probably gotten more familiar with a lot of the folks on the team or in the Zcash community. How has that been kind of coming in with fresh eyes and perspective? Has it been welcoming? Can you give a little background or context on to how that experience has gone?
Yeah, it's really been awesome. I mean, I've basically gotten to meet the core engineering team behind the project, people who were there from the beginning, right? Like the real beginning. And then they're all like super nice people and they're like real cypherpunks. Zuko is a cypherpunk, right? I would say like one of the last cypherpunks. He exchanged emails with Satoshi, and like just knowing that is so cool. It's
Yeah.
so cool to see, and like he's within us. And then Sean Bowe is like an absolute legend. He did Halo 2, which removed Zcash from the need for the trusted setup with the Orchard pool. And then now he's working on Tachyon, which is going to be the next big thing. And then the engineers are just like so dedicated to the project, and it's funny, they don't even see the price action, right? I was with them
Right.
and I was like, hey guys, are you seeing this? I was like, oh, I didn't even notice until somebody told me this morning. Okay, well, I'm checking it like every 10 minutes, but anyway, it's like it's super cool to see like that, like such they're building so deliberately towards a vision, which is super super cool to see. And then Josh and like his team with Zashi and ECC is phenomenal. Like I don't know if you've used Zashi, but it's such a good experience to use it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like sort of on the wallet side, single-handedly reviving Zcash, in my opinion. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
No, it's fantastic. We had Josh on too, and it's really cool. I mean, we need a lot of different solutions that are making privacy easier for people, and we should celebrate that for sure. And I think that it's also been interesting seeing, I don't know, sometimes, it's almost like you got these monks that are working on these things, right? That are kind of, you're saying they're not looking at the price action, but I think with a lot of this stuff too, it's so complicated, technically, that seeing what's come out, been memed out of this has been it has been very cool to see some of the people I've seen saying, oh yeah, encrypted Bitcoin. And these things where it's like, oh, why didn't they think of that sooner? Like it's so catchy. The stuff coming out of this is like really, really cool because I feel like what you guys are doing is kind of there was a perception in this space that if you're around for more than a cycle, you're kind of an old dog or dinosaur or whatever. And in reality, anywhere outside of crypto, given the conditions of like staying alive in this space, right? Experience in this space is valuable, right? And so I think what I'm seeing you guys do with this is it's really optimism and encouraging for me to see too, because it's kind of turning the tide a lot on some of these things that were kind of bunk, where like so much of this is driven by hype and speculation and all of that, to where like whatever they're nagging you about for not doing now ends up being dead in 6 months. And so it's really cool. I mean, like from your point of view, what makes a meme kind of dangerous or liberating, right? There's definitely two sides to this sword. So like, I don't know, maybe we can go into the weeds a little bit on that.
Sure. Yeah. I think just on your earlier point, like freedom is objectively worth fighting for,
Right.
and like you don't want to just throw your hands up in the air and be like, oh, the world's going to get over. Everybody's financial transactions are just going to feed into the panopticon. There's like the AI doom side of this as well, which is like a different argument as well. They're like, oh, AGI is going to just kill all humans, like Nick Bostrom and stuff. I would say those are like destructive memes. Like the end of the world is like the most famous meme, right? I think like this one's in the Wall Street. It's the most famous meme, and it's always been around. Like the world's gonna end, right?
Four horsemen, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the flip side of, oh, like everything's gonna be fine. So both sides are basically telling you to do nothing. Where like it's the end of the world, and like nothing you do is gonna change it. Or like everything's gonna be okay, and we're gonna make progress automatically and magically, so you don't have to do anything. Like that sort of naive optimism is also wrong. You don't just make progress automatically. And so just like encouraging man not to act, like that is fundamentally antithetical to us human beings, right? That's not how we are.
Right.
So just like always knowing that, hey, you can make objective moral progress and objective like scientific progress, and you can never like be certain about something, because then you're being dogmatic, and there's always things you can improve upon in all fields, right? And so just like applying that to reality and building things that you believe in, I think is a cool thing to do.
Yeah. And, kind of continuing down this thread, I think that was a great explanation. Like the flip side of these memes too is that given the kind of velocity and time and attention spent consuming them, right, with every bit of good that they can do, they could also kind of be used for manipulation, right? What do you think about how we can kind of protect our mind from manipulation from these things?
Yeah, I mean, you need to be an independent thinker, right? This is sort of a problem with groupthink. For any group to survive, like it needs consensus. And that sort of just discourages thinking independently or thinking different from the crowd, from your group. And this happens with like, this can happen with Bitcoiners and Zcashers as well. That's why you don't want to like just, it's not the group you care about, right? It's like truth, and only individuals can reach the truth. Truth seeking is not a group effort. And, obviously like in a way it's a group effort when nobody's taking for granted somebody's ideas, and like there's no like one idea that's tying the group together. But if there is such an idea, it's like the only way to make progress is error correction. So what people do is like you're coming up with ideas, and then it's just open to debate. So people are having conversations and so debating ideas, and in that sense creating knowledge together. But really it's like everybody's coming up with ideas themselves and then doing conjecture and criticism. That's like the only way to create knowledge. And so yeah, I think I forgot your question, but I was just like rambling about
it. No, just kind of, avoiding. Well, there's another part to this too, I think, where it's like people see memes get hijacked too, right? Like, or manipulated too. So there's kind of like the one side of it, which I think you covered well around like kind of using critical thinking to kind of protect your mind from getting manipulated on these things. But then what's your take on like, because we've seen these happen in good and bad ways too, right? There's like community takeovers for things, right? Where like a meme can kind of look at like Doge, but like also look at Doge, right? Like Doge started as a dog meme, and then all of a sudden Elon's kind of like the face of it, or one way or another, right? Which is good. It could be good or bad. It's subjective. But I think, is it like a strength of community thing, or like how do you see it as how these things can kind of get manipulated, the meme itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that all states have like mandated education, and like they start young, right? So like they know that, hey, if you get to them young, it's like they have lesser time to develop their critical faculties and to like come up with ideas that threaten you or are dissident to like the norm. And so, I mean, it doesn't have to be the state. It doesn't have to be someone in power. Like people can have like bad ideas, but like the only way to correct them is with better ideas, right? So never accepting anything on faith, I think, is a big thing. And like not accepting it because Satoshi said it or Zuko said it or some like authority said it, right? That doesn't matter. Always judge ideas based on their explanations, not their sources. So I think the most dangerous thing is when just that process of like error correction is disabled, right? Essentially in a way that it's made so that you're going to get ostracized if you're against whatever the group is saying. And I
Hmm.
hope that doesn't happen with Zcash or, with all these important fights that we're fighting for freedom, because you can always improve, right? Like Zcash is
Hmm.
currently improving with Tachyon, like it's going to scale to billions. And so there's like always improvements that can be made to the protocol and to the community and like those sorts of ideas. So yeah, I mean, never accepting that you're finished and like there's always more progress to be made.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think, you see it with folks that are in different kinds of leadership roles too with these projects too, how they take, criticism or bug reports or incident response or these things. And it makes a huge impact on people's faith in the project and like having good source material to work with, right? Like, and, if you're cooking with good ingredients, you're going to end up, you can make a whole bunch of different meals or whatever. But yeah, like, and you mentioned something earlier too, and I'd love to get your take on it. Like, one of the things you really like to do is spread rational optimism, right? Like, and you think about how much of the timeline is driven by either fear or outrage or hype, right? How is it from your point of view with spreading rational optimism? Is it something that do you get surprised in doing that? Like, do people take, is the take rate on it good? I'm super curious because you don't see a lot of, maybe I'm just not looking at everything either, but I feel like I don't see a lot of that. And I liked that I see what you guys are doing or what you're doing with this, but I'm just kind of curious, like, how is it response wise from people is it good? Are there things that surprise you? Just kind of curious for your take.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to at least like have a group of people around me who like share these sorts of ideas. But whenever I go online and like look at AI doom debates and degrowthers and like environmentalists and all that sort of stuff, I'm like, wow, there's like this entire group of people that think that like the world's going to end and there's nothing we can do about it unless like we go to this entirely primitive state where we're not producing anything. And basically like the woke mind virus in a sense, right, is just like a suicide cult in my opinion. You don't want people. It's like you are the carbon they want to reduce, right? Like essentially you're made of carbon and they want to reduce carbon. So it's deeply anti-human and like it doesn't grasp the importance of human knowledge and what it can do to the universe and how really like we as humans can save other species as well, right? We're the only species that would like only species that we know of, at least there might be aliens in the universe who are smarter than us, who knows, but that really care about other species despite it as like actually benefiting us in sort of like a biased way, right? So we can save these other species as well. Like we know that after 5 billion years, like the sun's gonna turn into a red giant and just like the solar system is gonna get over, right? Like, it's gonna be done
Hmm.
unless there's something we do about it. Like
Hmm.
we know what it would essentially take to make that process not happen, like to be safe from that. Like maybe we're just not in the solar system, right? Maybe we're in some like other star system or galaxy. I think like that's such an optimistic take that like really nobody thinks about, and like all physics textbooks tell you that hey, after 5 billion years it's over. But what I got from reading Deutsch and even Karl Popper's work is like, hey, humans can create knowledge that knowledge is like the one thing that affects the physical world in a way that's stronger than like gravity and other physical forces in nature, right?
Hmm.
And so, unfortunately, I don't see like that sort of thinking as mainstream. Maybe people think like it's too naive again, but all evils are due to a lack of knowledge. Like everything is a knowledge problem, right? And really, you just need the knowledge to solve all these problems. And so, I'm optimistic as long as like, hey, we continue to solve these problems and like keep the method of error correction open so that these problems are actually getting solved.
I can tell you one thing. I think that it's working. I've been at Brave for 9 years now, and we've been, beating the drum of privacy. And when we started, people were challenging us stuff from like even in the abstract of like whether people care or not. And I think that what you guys are doing with Zcash right now is showing a bunch of things. One, that you can meme privacy, like that it's important to people, that younger people care about this shit, like that in a way that's super, it's obvious, but also important because people like to the people that want to take it away use this as an excuse for things, right? Oh, the social media generation, like whatever. And but I also think too, kind of to your point, even about the sun global, Bitcoin came out of the worst global financial crisis in history, right? That's kind of what Bitcoin was born from. And I think what's really interesting about what we're seeing with Zcash right now is that like now that Bitcoin's kind of getting mass, attention at least, the next step is like, look, like this can go one or two ways. This can either get very dystopian and your money becomes a faucet that someone else can turn on or off, or like we can try to get something with similar to like, analogous cash where I can, have fungible money that we can, don't have to be identified to use, right? Like, I mean, kind of from your point, and I'd love to get your point of view on this because you mentioned freedom too earlier and kind of like, why is privacy like really important at this moment in time and that we're in right now?
Yeah, I don't think you have freedom without privacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's always watching you, you're not going to be your authentic self and you're just not going to be free to be you, right? And money is such a fundamental way in which humans and people express themselves in that if that is being surveilled at all times, you're just not living in a free market system, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the Austrians talk about privatizing everything. I think like start with privatizing the money, right? Actually privatizing it, but like Bitcoin sort of did it moved it to the private sector, but it's not money yet. I mean, in a way it is, but it's not reached that mass scale yet, nor at
Mm-hmm.
Zcash, obviously. But it's transparent. So privatize the money
Right.
in two different ways, like
Right.
actually make it private.
A great point in there about like not having, you don't have freedom without privacy, right? And I think, just like you said, we're seeing Bitcoin hit this kind of bigger mass, right? Like, and now regulators are starting to look at this stuff and they're not as well versed in what's possible, right? Whereas like, okay, they tend to kind of solve things with the hammer, right? And Zcash has this ability, right? Like with where you can do things transparently or with shielded pools. What's your take on how that works? Because I think that's something that a lot of people might not understand very well.
Yeah, I mean, you want privacy by default for the individual, right? And I would say like Zashi is a great tool for that. You can just use Zashi and it essentially works like shielded by default.
Mm-hmm.
If you receive funds on your transparent address, you need to shield it before you spend it. So it's like kind of
Mm-hmm.
enforcing privacy over there. And then the transparent layer really helps with like this broader integration into crypto, like with DEXs and also centralized exchanges. And with Zashi, it's just seamless to use. So I don't understand when people say like, "Hey, users are going to fumble if there's like this optional transparency," but really that's a like wallet and UI problem which is solved with Zashi.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's like totally fine to have that transparent layer. So like you have this like deeper integration into crypto, and you want to like dexes and like companies to store their wallet transparently so that you can see if you're like receiving funds and like sending funds to them, right? So it just enables those integrations well, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I'd kind of agree with that too. I think people have Venmo, and then you can make your make your transfers public or private there, right? Like I mean,
Right.
little p private, but I think yeah, and that's super interesting. Do you see Zcash as something that, in your best prediction, people are using cash now, or is it something where people are kind of like shielding funds and using them in other ways? Where do you see this going in the future?
Sure, I think it can work in both ways, right? Like a store of value and a medium of exchange. What I don't think like a lot of people understand is like your anonymity grows the more time you spend in the shielded pool, and with each shielded transaction as well. Like each shielded transaction note, like it increases your anonymity, like with everybody else. So it's better than a decoy system where like you just have like the
Hmm.
same anonymity every transaction you're making. Let's say you have like 4 decoys and like the real transaction, right? So your anonymity set is just like 5 for every transaction. But with Zcash, it increases monotonically with every single transaction, which is super cool. So, and obviously the longer you're storing it, it's also better for privacy and like the more people start using it as well. So I think really like you don't want people knowing like, hey, where you're buying your coffee from daily, I would say.
Right.
Plus, historically, all wealth has been like all the major wealth and like even rich people today store their wealth privately, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to literally have a bounty on your head every time you're walking outside, right? It's
Right.
unfortunate, like some people are famous, so they can't really escape from that. That's why they have security and everything. But even them, like they don't like just broadcast their net worth to everybody, right? And just instinctively, like humans crave privacy. Like women won't wear jewelry if they're walking outside. Like they'll just
Hmm.
wear jewelry from one safe space to another safe space in the car, right? If they're going to a party in like a good place. So people do crave privacy because like in a way it's very is deeply connected to like being authentic and just like being able to express yourself. But you can only express yourself in that way with like certain conditions, right? So like privacy is just like, in a way, privacy is like the substrate of freedom, the conditions for freedom. Zcash ideally is used both as store value and a medium of exchange.
Hey, you've been super gracious with your time today. It's been like super awesome conversation, and I think our audience is going to dig it too. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want our audience to know?
No, I think that was great. I really appreciate Brave for relentlessly supporting privacy and being an ally to Zcash and having a great wallet, a great desktop wallet. So yeah, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and thanks for having me on.
Well, likewise, it goes both ways, and yeah, I can't say it enough. It's been an amazing surprise and delightful one to see how much privacy is just kind of getting memed out there right now. It's an amazing thing, and I totally commend you in the community for doing that. Also, you've got a great blog, right? I've gone through that. Can you let our audience know where they can find you online?
Sure, Twitter is the best place. Feel free to DM me at Arjun Khemani. My website or blog is arjunkhemani.com.
Awesome, man. Well, Arjun, I really appreciate the time. Love to have you back too, like to check back in on things. And yeah, thanks for stopping by, man. Really, really enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, that was super fun. Thanks.
All right, awesome. Thanks for listening to the Brave Technologist podcast. To never miss an episode, make sure you hit follow in your podcast app. If you haven't already made the switch to the Brave browser, you can download it for free today at brave.com and start using Brave Search, which enables you to search the web privately. Brave also shields you from the ads, trackers, and other creepy stuff following you across the web.